Jiho pressed his face against the cold window and watched the stars turn slowly. His breath made small clouds on the glass. The ship was dying around him, and he was dying with it. 3 months ago, everything had been different. The exploration ship New Soul had been alive with voices and laughter. Jiho remembered how excited everyone had been when they reached the Kepler 442 system. They were the first humans to travel this far from Earth. They were making history. Then the main engine exploded. The blast killed 6 crew members instantly and damaged everything else. The ship kept moving through space, but it could not stop or turn around. They were trapped, flying away from home at impossible speed. Jiho touched his throat. The explosion had hurt him too. Pieces of metal had cut his neck and damaged his voice. Now he could only whisper one word clearly. His own name, Jiho. He whispered to the empty bridge. The word came out soft and broken like a prayer. It reminded him of his mother, Yoonhee. When he was small, she would tuck him into bed and whisper his name just like that. She made it sound special and important, like he was the most precious thing in the world. That was so long ago, so far away. Jiho closed his eyes and remembered the last 2 months. First, the food machines broke down. They tried to fix them, but nothing worked. The ship's computer said they had enough emergency food for maybe 6 weeks if they were careful. They were not careful. They were scared and desperate. The food ran out in 4 weeks, then people started getting sick. The radiation from the broken engine was poisoning them slowly. The medical bay could help a little, but not much. One by one, his friends and crewmates got weaker and quieter. Minho was the last to go. He had been Jiho's best friend since training school on Earth. They had dreamed together about exploring the stars and finding new worlds. Even when he was dying, Minho kept smiling. "At least I beat the hunger," Minho had said with his last breath. "The radiation got me first. That was a week ago." Now Jiho was alone with the ghosts and the silence. He looked at the control panel. Most of the lights were red or completely dark. The ship was running on emergency power, and even that would not last much longer. The heating system was failing. Soon it would be too cold for him to survive. Maybe that was better. Maybe it was time to join his friends. Jiho stood up slowly. His legs were weak from hunger and sickness. The radiation was killing him too, just more slowly than it had killed the others. His hair had fallen out weeks ago. His skin was pale and covered with dark spots. He walked to the environmental controls. There was a manual switch there. If he pulled it, all the air would flow out of the ship. It would be quick and peaceful. No more pain, no more loneliness, Jiho, he whispered again. His mother's voice seemed to echo in his memory. She had always said his name like it mattered, like he mattered. Even here, at the end of everything, that memory felt warm and good. He reached for the switch. His hand shook as he touched it. Through the window, something moved. Jiho turned and pressed his face against the glass again. At first, he thought he was seeing things. The radiation sickness made people see things that were not there. But then he saw it again. A shadow passed in front of the stars. Then another. Ships. 3 of them, maybe 4. They were long and smooth. Nothing like human ships. They moved without sound through the darkness, surrounding the New Soul like hungry fish around a dying whale. Jiho's heart started beating faster. After 3 months of complete silence, something else was out here. He was not alone anymore. He stumbled to the communications panel and turned on the radio. Maybe these strangers would help him. Maybe they would take him home. Or maybe they would just end his suffering quickly. "This is Commander Jiho of the human ship New Soul," he tried to say into the microphone, but his broken voice would not work properly. Only a whisper came out, Jiho, that was all he could manage. Just his name, spoken like his mother used to say it. The alien ships came closer. Jiho could see them more clearly now. They had no windows that he could see, but they glowed with soft blue light. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. One of the ships touched the New Soul. Jiho felt the impact through the deck plates. Metal scraped against metal. Then he heard new sounds, cutting tools maybe, or drilling. The aliens were coming inside. Jiho sat down in the captain's chair and waited. He was too weak to run or fight. Too tired to be afraid anymore. Whatever happened next would happen. The bridge door opened with a hiss. Air flowed in from outside carrying strange smells. Something like flowers, but wrong. Something like electricity. Tall figures filled the doorway. They were not human. They had too many arms and their heads were the wrong shape. Their skin looked hard like insect shells. They made clicking sounds when they moved. One of them stepped forward and looked at Jiho. It had large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. It tilted its head and made more clicking sounds. Jiho looked back at the alien. He was not afraid anymore. He was curious. After traveling so far from Earth, after losing everything, he had finally found something new. Something impossible and wonderful, Jiho, he whispered. The alien's head tilted the other way. It made different sounds, softer ones, almost like it was trying to copy him. Then everything went dark. When Jiho woke up, he was not on his ship anymore. The air tasted different. The gravity felt wrong. Strange lights moved in patterns he did not understand. But he was alive. Against all odds, after everything he had lost, he was still alive and he was not alone. Jiho, he whispered to the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, something whispered back. Jiho opened his eyes and saw a ceiling that moved like water. The surface flowed and shifted with colors he had never seen before. Blue mixed with silver, then became something that was not quite purple and not quite green. He was lying on something soft but firm. When he tried to sit up, his body felt different, lighter. The gravity here was not like Earth gravity or ship gravity. It pulled him in strange directions, as if down was not quite down anymore. The air smelled like copper pennies and the moment before lightning strikes. When he breathed, it tasted fizzy on his tongue like carbonated water but thicker. Jiho looked around. He was in a huge room with walls that curved up and up until they disappeared into darkness. Strange plants grew from the floor and walls. They glowed with their own light, pulsing slowly like heartbeats. Some had leaves that looked like glass. Others had flowers that rang like tiny bells when the air moved them. Jiho, he whispered. His voice still would not work right. The word came out broken and soft, but it was still his name. Still the sound his mother Yunhee used to make when she tucked him in at night. Something clicked in the darkness above him. Then more clicks, like insects talking to each other in a language made of snaps and taps. 3 tall figures came down from the ceiling. They moved on too many legs, flowing down the curved walls like spiders, but they were much bigger than spiders. They were tall as basketball players with arms that bent in too many places. Their skin was dark and shiny, like the shell of a beetle. They had heads that were long and narrow, with eyes that caught light and threw it back like mirrors. When they moved, they made soft clicking sounds. The biggest one stopped in front of Jiho. It tilted its head and looked at him with those mirror eyes. Then it made a series of clicks and taps, pointing at Jiho with one long finger. Jiho did not understand the sounds, but he understood the pointing. The alien was asking about him. Maybe asking who he was, Jiho, he said again, touching his chest. The alien made more clicking sounds. This time they seemed almost like laughter. Not nice laughter, but the kind bullies make when they see something weak and stupid. Another alien came closer. This one had patterns painted on its shell skin in bright colors. It carried a small device that projected pictures in the air between them. The pictures showed numbers first. Simple math. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. Jiho nodded to show he understood. Then the pictures showed a map of space. Stars and planets connected by lines. The alien pointed to one tiny dot and made questioning sounds. Earth, Jiho said, though it came out as a whisper. He pointed to the same dot. The alien with the painted patterns made more clicks. The pictures changed, showing a long line from that tiny dot to where they were now. It was a very, very long line, longer than Jiho had ever imagined. Then the pictures showed something that made his heart sink. They showed his ship, the New Soul. But in the picture, it was broken and empty. Dead. The painted alien pointed to Jiho, then to the dead ship in the picture. It made sounds that were definitely laughter now. Not happy laughter, mean laughter. More pictures appeared. They showed other ships from other worlds, all of them broken and empty like the New Soul. And they showed creatures from those ships, aliens with different shapes and sizes, but all of them looked sad and tired. Jiho began to understand. These tall clicking aliens collected broken ships. They collected the last survivors from dead crews. They kept them like trophies. The biggest alien made a long series of clicks and showed new pictures. These showed a huge ship, much bigger than any ship Jiho had ever seen. It had thousands of rooms and chambers, and in those rooms were glass containers with creatures inside them, a zoo, or a museum, a place where the clicking aliens kept the last examples of species that had failed to survive in space. The big alien pointed to Jiho and made more laughing sounds. In the pictures, Jiho saw a glass container waiting for him, a label that would say human, last specimen, but then something else entered the room. She moved differently than the clicking aliens. She walked on two legs like Jiho, but taller and more graceful. Her skin was not dark shell, but silver that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Her face was almost human, but more beautiful, with large dark eyes that looked sad and kind. The clicking aliens made different sounds when they saw her. Respectful sounds, but not friendly. Like she was important but not liked. She approached Jiho slowly, carefully. When she got close, she knelt down so her face was level with his. Her silver skin reflected the lights of the glowing plants around them. She opened her mouth and made sounds. Not clicks like the others, but something more like singing, soft and musical and somehow familiar. Then she did something amazing. She placed her hand on her chest and spoke one word. Nari. Her voice was gentle and warm. She said her name the same way Jiho said his. The same way his mother had said his name. With love and care and the feeling that names were important things that should be spoken softly. Jiho looked into her dark eyes and saw something he had not seen in months. Kindness, understanding. Jiho, he whispered back. When Nari heard his name, her expression changed. Her eyes grew wider and softer. She made a sound that was almost like crying, but not sad crying. Happy crying. Surprised crying. She reached out very slowly and touched his hand. Her skin was warm and smooth. When their fingers met, Jiho felt something like electricity, but gentler. Like she was sharing something with him through touch. Pictures appeared in his mind. Not like the alien technology, but somehow coming from her. He saw her world. A place with silver trees and blue grass and cities that sang in the wind. He saw her people, all with that same liquid metal skin and those same kind eyes. Then he saw those cities burning, ships like the ones that had saved him, but bigger and more terrible. He saw Nari's people being taken away in glass containers. She was like him. The last one, the only survivor. But there was something else in the pictures. Something that made Jiho's heart beat faster. Nari was not just a prisoner here. She was planning something. The clicking aliens made impatient sounds. The big one pointed to Jiho and then to a doorway. Time to go to his glass container. Time to become a specimen. But Nari stood up and made musical sounds at them. The clicking aliens clicked back, angry now. There was an argument happening in languages Jiho could not understand. Finally, the big alien made a dismissive sound and waved its arms. Nari had won something, but Jiho did not know what. She helped him stand up. His legs were still weak, but her touch made him feel stronger. She led him toward a different doorway, away from where the clicking aliens wanted to take him. As they walked, she leaned close to his ear and whispered something in her singing language. He did not understand the words, but he understood the feeling. Hope. For the first time since the new soul had broken down, Jiho felt like maybe the story was not over yet. Maybe there was still something to fight for, Jiho, he whispered. Nari, she whispered back. And in that exchange of names, spoken with love in the belly of a ship full of death, something new began to grow. Nari led Jiho through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls curved and twisted like the inside of a seashell. Lights moved along the ceiling in patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. They passed many rooms with glass walls. Inside each room, Jiho saw creatures he had never imagined. Some looked like giant butterflies with wings made of crystal. Others were like walking trees with faces in their bark. Some were just balls of light that pulsed with different colors. All of them were still, not dead but not awake either. Sleeping in their glass prison specimens, Nari said quietly. It was the first word she had spoken in his language, and it sounded sad in her musical voice. Jiho understood. These were the last examples of species that the clicking aliens had collected. Each one was the final survivor of their kind, kept alive but not really living. They walked deeper into the ship. The corridors became smaller and darker. The walls were covered with a kind of metal that looked old and worn. This part of the ship felt forgotten. Nari stopped at a door that looked like all the others. But when she touched it, the door recognized her and opened with a soft sound. Inside was something impossible. It was a garden. A real garden with soil and plants and even a small stream that bubbled over rocks. The ceiling was high and transparent, showing the stars outside. But the air was warm and smelled like flowers and growing things. How? Jiho whispered. Nari smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile, and it made her silver face glow with warmth. She took his hand and led him into the garden. "Secret," she said in her singing voice. Then she switched to his language again, speaking carefully like someone who had learned the words from listening. "They think I only keep specimens. They do not look here." The garden was full of plants from different worlds. Jiho saw flowers that looked like tiny suns, their petals glowing with golden light. There were trees with silver leaves that chimed like bells in the breeze. Vines grew up the walls, covered with fruit that sparkled like jewels. But it was not just pretty. As they walked through the paths, Nari showed him things that made him understand how clever she was. "This," she said, pointing to a patch of blue grass, "makes oxygen better than earth plants. These flowers," she touched some red blooms that looked like roses, "clean poison from water. These vines grow food in soil that should be dead." She had not just collected pretty plants. She had collected useful ones. Plants that could help people survive in places where nothing should grow. They sat by the stream on a bench made from some kind of white stone. Nari dipped her hands in the water and drank. Jiho copied her. The water tasted clean and sweet, better than anything from the ship recyclers. "Why?" Jiho asked. "Why do this?" Nari looked at the stars through the transparent ceiling. For a long time she did not speak. Then she began to tell him her story. Her people, the Velthari, had lived on a world of silver seas and singing cities. They were explorers and gardeners, spreading life to empty planets and helping other species grow strong. The clicking aliens, she called them the Kethmori, had come to her world 50 years ago. They said the Velthari were too soft, too caring. They spent too much time helping others and not enough time making themselves powerful. The Kethmori believed that only the strongest species deserved to survive. They tested every civilization they found. Those who were weak got harvested. Those who were strong got destroyed before they could become a threat. "Your people fought?" Jiho asked. Nari shook her head sadly. "We tried to talk, to share, to show them beauty." She touched a flower that glowed with soft purple light. "They called it weakness." The Kethmori had taken her world in 3 days. Most of her people were killed. A few, like Nari, were kept as specimens and caretakers. The Kethmori were good at destroying, but they did not understand how to keep things alive. They needed someone to tend their collection. "I have been here 40 years, Nari said, watching them collect the last survivors from 1,000 worlds. Each time I tell myself I will find a way to stop them. But they are so strong, so many." She looked at Jiho with those dark, sad eyes. "Then you came, and when you said your name..." She paused, searching for words. "My mother used to say my name like that, with love. Like it mattered." Jiho felt his throat tighten. "My mother, too." "The Kethmori do not understand," Nari continued. "They think names are just labels, like the labels on specimen jars. But we know better. Names are who we are. They are love made into sound." She stood up and walked to a part of the garden where the plants grew in strange patterns. As they got closer, Jiho realized the patterns were not random. They were like circuits or computer pathways, but made of living things. "I have been learning," Nari said. "The Kethmori keep all their collected knowledge in one place. The heart of this ship. They call it the memory core." She knelt beside a vine that pulsed with blue light. "This plant can connect to electronic systems. This one can store information like a computer. This one can transmit signals faster than their machines." Jiho began to understand. "You built a garden that is also a computer." "More than computer," Nari said excitedly. "The memory core does not just store information. It stores pieces of minds, fragments of consciousness from every species they have harvested." She stood and touched his arm. "When you spoke your name with such love, the core heard it." And something woke up. As if responding to her words, the plants around them began to glow more brightly. The stream bubbled louder. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. "They are not truly dead," Nari whispered. "All the people in the glass containers, all the civilizations that have been harvested, parts of them live on in the core, sleeping but not gone." Jiho felt his heart racing. "You think we can wake them up?" "I think you already started to," Nari said. "When you said your name the way your mother taught you. With love. With the knowledge that you matter, that you deserve to exist." She took his hands in hers. Her silver skin was warm and alive. "The Kethmori collect species like trophies. They think dead civilizations prove how superior they are. But they made a mistake. They kept us alive. They kept our knowledge. And they never learned the most important thing." "What?" Love is stronger than death, Nari said. And when you speak a name with love, you make it real. You make it powerful. Above them, the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the glowing plants. The garden hummed with hidden energy. And deep in the ship's memory core, fragments of consciousness that had been sleeping for decades began to stir. Jiho, Nari said softly, the way his mother used to. Nari, he replied, understanding now what she was asking. Together they began to speak the names they knew. Names of friends and family, names of homeworlds and lost civilizations. Each name spoken with love and respect and the absolute certainty that the people who had carried those names mattered. The garden began to sing, and throughout the vast harvest ship, in dark corners and forgotten storage bays, specimens began to wake up. The garden sang through the night if there was night aboard the alien ship. Jiho had lost track of time. He sat with Nari among the glowing plants, speaking names into the humming air. Minho, he said, thinking of his friend who had died smiling. Yoonhee, for his mother back on Earth. Captain Park, Engineer Kim, Dr. Lee. Each name felt important as he spoke it. Each one carried the weight of a person who had lived and mattered and deserved to be remembered. Nari spoke names too, in her musical language. Names of her family, her friends, her whole world that had been destroyed. As she spoke, tears ran down her silver cheeks, but she kept going. The plants around them grew brighter with each name. The stream bubbled louder, and from deep in the ship came new sounds, mechanical noises, but also something else, something that sounded almost like voices. It's working, Nari whispered. They're waking up. Through the transparent ceiling, Jiho could see other parts of the ship. Lights were turning on in sections that had been dark. Corridors that had been empty now showed movement, shadows walking where no one should be. Will the Kethmori notice? Jiho asked. Eventually, Nari said, but they do not understand what is happening. To them we are just two specimens making noise. They think the ship is having small technical problems. She stood and walked to the center of the garden, where the largest cluster of glowing plants grew in intricate patterns. When she touched the central vine, images appeared in the air above them. Jiho gasped. He was looking at the inside of the memory core. It was a vast chamber filled with floating crystals and streams of light. But now the crystals were pulsing with color, and the light streams were moving faster and brighter than before. In the depths of the chamber, shapes moved, not physical shapes, but something else. Consciousness taking form. Look there. Nari pointed to one area where the light swirled in complex patterns. That's where they store the knowledge from my world. And there, that's from the Malay, a people who loved mathematics and music. And that cluster there is from the Gorthani, who built cities among the stars. As Jiho watched, the different light patterns began to connect with each other. Knowledge and consciousness from dozens of civilizations started to merge and communicate. They're talking to each other, he said in wonder. More than talking, Nari said. They're learning, sharing, becoming something new. The images changed, showing other parts of the ship. In the specimen chambers, the glass containers were beginning to crack. Creatures that had been frozen in sleep for decades were stirring. Their eyes were opening, but it was not just the physical specimens waking up. Throughout the ship, holographic figures were appearing, ghosts made of light and memory. The preserved consciousness fragments were taking shape, becoming visible. Jiho saw a tall figure with 4 arms and skin like tree bark, one of the Gorthani, walking through the corridors as if he still lived. He saw small flying creatures with wings of pure energy, the Malay dancing through the air as they had once danced among their home world's floating cities. How many? Jiho asked. 3,000 civilizations, Nari said quietly. The Kethmori have been harvesting for a very long time. Each one they collected thinking they were proving their superiority. They never realized they were creating an army. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The Kethmori had finally noticed that something was wrong. Through the garden's walls, Jiho could hear the clicking and tapping of many feet running through the corridors. The harvest ship's masters were coming to investigate. What do we do? Jiho asked. Nari smiled, but this time her smile was not sad. It was fierce and determined. We do what your people call standing up to bullies, she said. She pressed both hands against the central plant cluster. The garden responded by glowing even brighter. The images in the air expanded, showing the entire ship now. What Jiho saw took his breath away. The harvest ship was transforming. The sterile metal corridors were sprouting with plant life, vines and flowers from 100 different worlds, growing together in impossible harmony. The specimen chambers were opening like flower buds, releasing their long-imprisoned occupants. And everywhere the ghostly figures of preserved consciousness walked alongside the newly awakened, sharing knowledge and memories across species and time. But the most amazing thing was the technology. As different species' knowledge merged in the memory core, their technologies began to merge too. Kethmori systems designed for control and suppression were being overridden by older, gentler sciences focused on growth and cooperation. The ship's weapons were turning into gardens. The prison cells were becoming living spaces where beings from different worlds could learn from each other. The cold metal walls were warming as heating systems from a dozen civilizations worked together to create perfect environments for life. "They will try to stop us," Nari said. "The Kethmori do not give up easily." As if summoned by her words, the garden's door exploded inward. The tall, clicking aliens poured through the opening, their mirror eyes reflecting the garden's strange lights. The largest Kethmori, the one Jiho had met before, strode forward and made angry clicking sounds. He pointed at Nari, then at the glowing plants, then at Jiho. Nari replied in the clicking language, but her musical voice made their harsh sounds seem almost beautiful. The big Kethmori made more angry noises and pulled out a weapon, a rod that sparked with electricity. He aimed it at the central plant cluster. "No." Jiho stepped forward, even though he was still weak and the alien was much bigger than him. The Kethmori looked at him with those mirror eyes and made laughing sounds. To this alien, Jiho was just a broken specimen, hardly worth noticing. That was when Jiho understood something important. The Kethmori saw him as weak because he was small and hurt and could only whisper. They did not understand that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. "Jiho," he said softly. The word came out just like always, broken and whispered, like his mother used to say it, like a prayer, like love made into sound, but this time when he spoke his name, the entire ship heard him. The memory core responded instantly. 3,000 civilizations worth of consciousness focused on that one whispered word. They heard in it everything the Kethmori had missed. The love, the defiance, the absolute refusal to be reduced to just a specimen in someone else's collection. The ship shuddered. Systems that had been offline for decades suddenly came alive. The air itself began to hum with power, and then from every speaker in the ship a chorus began. 3,000 different species, speaking their names the way Jiho had spoken his, the way Nari had spoken hers, with love and pride and the unshakable knowledge that they deserved to exist. The sound was beautiful and terrible and unstoppable. The Kethmori staggered backward, their clicking voices lost in the greater song. The harvest ship was no longer theirs. It belonged to the harvested now, and they were no longer specimens. They were free. The song of 3,000 civilizations shook the harvest ship to its core. Jiho felt the vibration in his bones and his heart in the very air he breathed. It was not just sound. It was hope and defiance and love all mixed together into something that could reshape reality. The Kethmori in the garden fell to their knees, their mirror eyes flickering as if the light inside them was going out. Their clicking voices became whispers, then silence. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were afraid. Around Jiho and Nari, the garden exploded into impossible growth. Plants from dead worlds reached toward the ceiling, their leaves and flowers glowing brighter than stars. The stream became a river that flowed upward in spirals, defying gravity through principles of science that the Kethmori had never understood. "Look," Nari whispered, pointing upward. Through the transparent ceiling, Jiho could see the ship's exterior changing. The cold metal hull was cracking open like an eggshell. From the cracks, gardens spilled out into space, impossible gardens that bloomed in vacuum, sustained by technologies that merged physics with biology in ways that should not work but did. The harvest ship was becoming something entirely new. Not a weapon or a prison, but a living world that carried the dreams of every civilization the Kethmori had tried to destroy. "The memory core," Nari said urgently. "We need to get there. The consciousness fragments are still trapped in crystal storage. We can free them completely, give them real bodies again." They left the garden, stepping over the motionless Kethamori who lay scattered like broken toys. The corridors outside had transformed into something from a fairy tale. Walls of living wood supported ceilings of woven light. The floor was soft grass that glowed with each step. Everywhere they looked, Jiho saw the impossible made real. Creatures from the specimen chambers walked freely, but now they were not alone. Beside each physical survivor walked glowing companions, the consciousness fragments of their people, finally given form. A tall being with crystal wings walked with a cloud of tiny lights that sang in harmonies. A creature that looked like a walking garden was accompanied by dozens of flower spirits that danced around its branches. Each reunion was a celebration, each meeting a miracle. How is this possible? Jiho asked. Love, Nari said simply. When you spoke your name with such love, you reminded the memory core what consciousness really is. Not just information to be stored, but living spirit that demands to exist. They reached the memory core chamber. The massive doors that had once been sealed tight now stood open, covered in flowering vines. Inside, the crystal storage arrays were dissolving like ice in spring sunshine, releasing streams of pure consciousness that took shape as beings of light and memory. At the center of it all stood a figure that made Jiho's breath catch. It was huge and beautiful and terrible all at once, a fusion of technologies and consciousness from 3,000 different worlds. Not one being, but a collective mind that contained multitudes. When it spoke, its voice was every language at once, somehow understandable despite being impossible. We remember, it said. We remember our names. We remember who we were. We remember why we mattered. The collective consciousness turned toward Jiho, and he felt the weight of 3,000 civilizations' attention focused on him. You began this with one word, it said. Your name spoken with love. That simple act awakened us all. Jiho felt tears on his cheeks. I just wanted to be remembered, the way my mother remembered me. And now you are remembered by all of us, the consciousness replied, as we will remember each other. As we will remember every being who has ever loved and been loved. Around them, the memory core chamber continued its transformation. The cold crystals and metal gave way to something that was part garden, part library, part temple. Knowledge flowed like water, consciousness bloomed like flowers, and memory became a living thing that could grow and change and dream. Through it all, the Kethamori's other ships approached, drawn by the commotion. But as they came close to the transformed harvest ship, something unexpected happened. The song of names and love reached them too. Jiho watched through the chamber's new windows as Kethamori crews began to hesitate. Some dropped their weapons. Others stood motionless, their mirror eyes reflecting not their surroundings but memories they had long forgotten. Even they had names once, Nari said softly. Even they were children who were loved. The collective consciousness nodded. We do not seek revenge. We seek restoration. The Kethamori lost their way when they forgot that all consciousness is precious. But it is not too late for them to remember. Some of the approaching Kethamori ships turned away, their crews unable to face what they had become. But others came closer, their weapons powering down. On those ships, individual Kethamori were beginning to remember their own names, their own worth beyond conquest and domination. What happens now? Jiho asked. The collective consciousness smiled with 10,000 faces at once. Now we grow, it said. We take this ship to worlds that need healing. We plant gardens on planets that have been stripped bare. We share knowledge with species that are struggling to survive. We do what the Kethamori could never understand. We make the galaxy better just by existing in it. Nari took Jiho's hand. Will you come with us? Help us build something beautiful? Jiho thought of his dead crew, his broken ship, his long journey from Earth. He thought of his mother Yunhee, so far away that he might never see her again. But he also thought of Minho, who had faced death with a smile and a joke, who had believed that reaching for the stars was worth any risk. Yes, he said. As if responding to his answer, the chamber around them began to change again. New gardens sprouted from the floor and walls. Streams of sweet water flowed in impossible patterns, and everywhere, beings from 3,000 worlds worked together to build something that had never existed before. A civilization based on love instead of fear, on cooperation instead of conquest. The transformed ship set course for the nearest inhabited system. Not to harvest or conquer, but to share and heal and grow. Behind them, more Kethmori ships followed, their crews awakening to the possibility that there might be a better way to exist in the universe. Jiho stood with Nari at an observation deck that had become a hanging garden. Below them, beings from across the galaxy worked side by side, their different technologies and philosophies blending into something greater than the sum of its parts. Jiho, Nari said, the way his mother used to say it. Nari, he replied, putting the same love into her name that she had shown his. Around them, the ship hummed with the voices of the awakened, 3,000 civilizations speaking their names with pride and joy, and the absolute certainty that they deserved to exist. The harvest was over. The planting had begun, and in the depths of space, a new kind of garden ship sailed toward distant stars, carrying seeds of hope and the simple truth that love, once awakened, can transform the universe itself. Years later, when Earth's radio telescopes detected the approaching vessel, the first message they received would be voices, billions upon billions of them, each speaking a name with the tenderness of a mother's love. The message would be simple and profound. We remember. We exist, we matter, and the galaxy would never be the same.